I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Oscar winner Danny Boyle, Director of Pistol. Danny, Pistol attempts to tell the story, fascinating origin story of the Sex Pistols. It's one that I wasn't really that familiar. I mean, obviously I was familiar with the band, but I didn't really know about their origins. And it's just one of the greatest bands of all time in terms of their influence. So why did you want to bring this to life as a limited series?
I think it's very personal for me, because I'm the exact same age as the group. So when they were starting off as, you know, like late teens, early 20s, I was the exact contemporary of them. And so the part they played for me in my life was obviously musically, it's like any group, you know, for, you know, your favorite group or whatever at the time. But they represented style. They broke in Britain. And it was expressed in popular terms through their profanity towards the Queen and the Jubilee, as was then in 1977. But actually, it was something much greater than that, which is that if you came from a background like I came from, and they came the exact same, a working class background, your prospects were very, very limited. And that is very difficult to explain to a modern, how limited your horizons were. In fact, the way I tried to explain it to the actors was that it felt like your life was timed, that you were young and then you were old, and there was nothing in. What they did was they kind of interrupted that. They smashed that, and not in a particularly constructive way, in a chaotic, almost destructive way. And they speak about destruction, but the value of it was it gave you the opportunity to say, there is something in between that. You don't have to follow your father's, put your shoes on and follow him into the factory or into prison or wherever, because Steve, the character of, is a thief, clearly at the beginning. That there was something else, that you could celebrate something else in your life. And it didn't have to be, this is the tricky bit, if you wanted to waste your life, that was it, you could waste it. Be futile, be vacant, be pretty vacant, as they say. But it was yours. Timelessness, that there was something in between. And it's interesting looking back now, and we have done nothing else since but celebrate that time in between, which has become greater and greater. The distance between being young and being old. We all live for as long as possible. And they were responsible for that. Punk, I think punk was the force that changed that, you know? So it was that, really. And also, just very simply, somebody very famous, I think, said, without music, life is a mistake. And I've always believed that. I mean, it's just, it has to be part, it's such a huge part for me of my life.
So speaking about music, Danny, I think, like, you know, music supervision, working with the music supervisor as a filmmaker, I mean, when I think back on Danny Boyle Productions, so much of it is about the needle drops and how you were able to meld them into the narrative. So as a filmmaker, what is it about music and needle drops that elevates the narrative as it does?
I think it's because I mean, I'm sure there were other people responsible for it, but in my memory, it was Scorsese who was principally responsible for bringing it to a mainstream audience, which is that you would, the normal principle is to hide music, is that it works invisibly on you. It affects you in the story. You don't realize you're being manipulated by music. But needle drops are different because they declare this is a pop song, which you probably already know and have a relationship with. So it's going to work with the narrative that you're watching in two ways. It's obviously the character's relationship, the reason it's in the scene, whether it's because they're in a pub or because it's a particular action sequence or comedy sequence or whatever it is. But then you've got your own relationship with the music as well. So it's kind of doubly impacting. And I think I kind of got addicted to it. And I remember when we put out Train Spotting, there were a lot of people, especially in Britain, thought it was very MTV. And I remember thinking, oh, I really like MTV. What's wrong with that? But I think it was because it wasn't classical. But that's the punk. It's what I was saying previously about punk, is that that's the instinct, which is to don't be afraid to step in where others tell you you're not qualified to. You know, that you, if you've got something to say, say it. And it's a very simple thing from it's certainly shaped my life anyway, and certainly the way I make films. Yeah, the music being a huge part of them, like you say.
Totally. Okay, so the first episode opens with clips of conservative high society, the royal family, and other turning points in the 70s, right, in the UK, against the strum of an electric guitar. So it starts getting us excited about what's to come. We see glimpses of Bowie, of course, and then Richard breaks into the Odeon, steals equipment. To me, that whole opening sequence is an ultimate FU to the establishment, to the status quo. Talk us through putting that sequence together, because it's so vital. If you don't hook the audience, it's possible they may not stick with you for the entire series.
Yeah, well, I hope they do, obviously. I think if you're British, really, everything starts with Bowie. And of course, he's on stage. This is a very famous concert, actually recorded by Pennebaker. And interestingly, Steve Jones, who's the main character in it, who goes on to become the guitarist with the Sex Pistols, he lived around that area, and he used to go stealing from this concert hall, especially if they were doing 2 nights and they left equipment there. He would break into the Hammersmith Apollo and actually steal equipment. He'd steal guitars, speakers, anything he could get his hands on. And of course, that's a wonderful metaphor to start with, really, that you break in and steal the equipment of David Bowie, so that you're kind of inheriting, you're paying your dues to David Bowie, but you're taking it on from him, really. So that was why we wanted to start it like that, really. And then they end up in this motor car evading the police. And it's sort of, they're scallywags, really. You know, it's fairly innocuous crime, but they are individuals and they speak for themselves. I love that about it. You know, they kind of, they don't really care what you think of them. And that's a very important part of punk, because one of the manipulations is people, particularly at that time, were telling people they weren't qualified for this, they weren't allowed to do this, they weren't allowed to contribute this, you must be respectful. And they were the ultimate disrespectful. They respected nothing. And out of it was born this album, Never Mind the Bollocks. And in the title itself, you can hear what they think about conventional taste.
I love that.
God bless them for it. Yeah, rather than the Queen.
Final question is, this has got a really intentional, specific choices in terms of the way it's framed and the way it's shot. It's got a beautiful retro aesthetic. The aspect ratio is more analog. There's a lot of touches that I can see your fingerprints all over it, and it just feels really right and authentic for what we're watching. But talk me through briefly what was behind those choices and why did you want to do it that way?
There's a wonderful documentary about them by one of our greatest filmmakers, British filmmakers, is Julian Temple. And it's his documentary work that signals him out as really, truly world class. And he made a wonderful documentary about them called Filth and the Fury. And we inherited from that, or stole from that, to put it in a more punk phraseology, the kind of use of archive and to blend archive with the world now. So we were trying to take people, you're trying to create a moment of truth that you want people to believe is 1976, you know, without the need of a DeLorean device to get you back there. And an archive is wonderful. And I think it was interesting hearing Pamela speak about different formats and different cameras. That is such a part of everybody's lives. People are so visually articulate about what they're prepared to, what they're interested in visually. And classicists would say, oh my God, there's too much grain, you know, because cameras are all about eradicating grain and going for this 8K look or 16K look. But in fact, people's habits and people's lives are full of all photographs or videos. And so it was to try and just ferret around in that, because you're dealing in memory and you're also dealing in present day as well at the same time. So it was trying to find a way of harnessing both those forces without you feeling either interrupted each other.
Yeah, and without it being gimmicky, it just feels so immersive. I had so much fun watching this show. I wish you could make more. Danny, thank you for your time today. We're going to bring you back shortly for our group chat.
Thank you.